Here we're gonna look at Himawari 8 and 9 when they were launched. I have sped up the video. You see on the corner, top corner, right, 10 times. And as you see, all rockets, they curve. They don't go really to space. Now from there, they change it to CGI. Of course, there's no way they can pull this off if they don't change it to CGI. And you see the trajectory of the rocket. Now this is amazing. I got this from JAXA website. It's an hour and a half, 1.5 hour long, but I have sped up and just edited the places. You see how it goes and releases the part. Now this is the important part that I'm gonna pause right there. You see the trajectory of that aircraft from Japan all the way until officially leaves Earth, right? Earth's atmosphere or orbit and goes to space. So two things we gotta look at here. First, look at this distance, and I calculated this distance, and I calculated this distance that the rocket's trajectory to be of 12,179 kilometers. Or 7,568 miles. I calculated based by where the rocket left Earth to be exactly at where this place here is located. You see island. You see islands right here, down in the Pacific, belongs to the United Kingdom. Now, there are two things that we should look here. But first, I want to ask you, have you ever heard of Punto NEMO or Point NEMO? Exactly. So let's learn a little bit about Point NEMO.
Factsverse presents the underwater cemetery that NASA doesn't want people to know about. But we're going to tell you anyway. Well, there is a place that they all go. It's the underwater cemetery that NASA doesn't want you to know about. It exists out in the middle of the ocean. Just beyond New Zealand is a stretch of ocean known as the South Pacific Ocean Uninhabited Area, or SPAWA. Most nations around the world, they use this same name for the stretch of ocean, and they also know it as the Spaceship Cemetery. For nearly 50 years, this has been the final resting place for spacecraft from various countries. There's a reason that experts have chosen this particular area. The coordinates are 43 degrees 34 minutes 48 seconds south by 142 degrees 43 minutes 12 seconds west. It's also known as Point NEMO, named after Nemo for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. More importantly, it's Earth's sole oceanic point of inaccessibility. While the area is often clear of ships, there are some who pass through the area from time to time. Fortunately, space organizations are very careful about that. Before a ship is going to be sent to the underwater graveyard, a notice is sent well in advance. That gives ship's captains an idea of when it is safe to pass and when it's not. With all the mysteries associated with space, though, it's kind of nice to have at least one answer, huh? You know now where the ships end up. It might sound strange to take ships from space and send them to one of the deepest areas of Earth, but, well, it works.
So they claim, look at this trajectory of the rocket. And as I told you, I calculated this distance to be at least 8,000 miles. But if you look at this image right here, the satellite is supposed to be 36,000 kilometers away, 22,000 miles, and it's the size of a car. Okay, so this is Australia right here. That's where the satellite is supposed to be. But remember, this satellite is only 5 to 6 meters big, or 16 feet. If the rocket had gone 12,000 kilometers on the surface of the Earth, that's 1/3 of the way of getting where it's supposed to be. Now here, that's 1/3 of the way. Why didn't these rockets just go straight up? Because they can't leave Earth. They go, they burn everything, and they fall into Point NEMO. The Point NEMO is not exactly right here. It's all this region right here, south of this island. Okay, so this is exactly where the rocket came this way right here. It never really left Earth. Now this is what they say happened. It was catapulted from here after going around the Earth almost 13,000 kilometers or 8,000 miles. When it's totally out of fuel, it was catapulted. Now, remember, guys, the Earth does not rotate this way like this because this is south.
How do we know for sure?
Well, so they put me on a space shuttle, and they hit the red button, and I launched into space, going eastbound at 17,000 miles an hour.
Going eastbound at 17,000 miles an hour. Going eastbound at 17,000 miles an hour.
Earth is supposed to be spinning from west to east and at a speed of only 1,000 miles per hour. And they say the whole time, because it's so big and so slow, you wouldn't have any effect. That's why we are not thrown out. But they said the satellite somehow was catapulted out to the atmosphere. Another absurd claim, of course. Right, so this is a close look at Himawari 8 and 9, both of them. Let's keep on watching the video. You're going to see both of them had the same trajectory. Okay, this is Himawari 9. It's same thing happened to Himawari 8. Even it looks like exactly the same footage. And this time we went straight to the clouds and then changed to CGI. I sped it up 10 times, of course, but it follows the same trajectory, same drawing, very similar to that moon landing by the Chinese. Very similar. The camera is always pointed back, never forward, never look at the sky. But it goes straight to that region, the South Pacific. And after it burns out the fuel, everything, they say it's catapulted towards this space. Even though it had already flown above Earth, almost 12,000 kilometers or 8,000 miles, 1/3 of the distance where it should be after spending all the fuel here. They say it still reaches orbit, but nothing leaves Earth. Himawari is supposed to be in geostationary orbit. As you can see, we are told that within this special orbit, an object will be caught in the rotation of the Earth. As we can see on the top right, the satellite is rotating with Earth. Geostationary orbits can only be achieved at an altitude of 22,000 miles or 35,000 kilometers, and has to be directly above Earth. So let that sink in for a minute. We are told they are pointing at a satellite 22,236 miles away that's traveling at 6,935 miles per hour to maintain a perfectly synchronous orbit with the 1,440 miles rotation of the Earth. First of all, somebody want to tell me how we got those satellites out that far to lock onto our rotation with the Earth blazing through the space in 3 different directions. And second, I would think that the Van Allen radiation belt, they pack those things in, would cause some signal issues once in a while, considering they seem to struggle with rain. Says the outer belt consists mainly of high energy 0.1 to 10 MeV electrons trapped by the Earth's magnetosphere. It is more variable than the inner belt as it is more easily influenced by solar activity. It is almost toroidal in shape, beginning at an altitude of 3 and extending to 10 Earth radius, 13,000 to 60,000 kilometers, or 8,000 to 37,000 miles above the Earth.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
All the geostationary satellites are exactly inside the radiation belt, Van Allen radiation belt. Let's look at here what keeps these satellites orbiting, or in this case, the stationary satellite standing right there at 35,000 kilometers away or 22,000 miles. Satellites that orbit close to Earth feel a stronger tug of Earth's gravity. To stay in orbit, they must travel faster than a satellite orbiting farther away. The International Space Station orbits about 250 miles above the Earth and travels at a speed of about 17,000 miles per hour. Compare that to the tracking and data relay satellites, which help us get information to and from other NASA missions. These satellites orbit at a height of more than 22,000 miles and travel much slower, about 6,700 miles per hour, to maintain their high orbit. So Himawari is standing right there on a tug of war between. This is where actually one stationary satellite would be like, and you see here enable and support Earth's gravity and centrifugal forces act on geostationary satellites. In any stable orbit, a satellite is in an equilibrium between the Earth's gravity, indicated here with a blue arrow, this one pointing towards Earth, and centrifugal force due to its velocity, indicated in green. So the centrifugal force is pulling the satellite towards away from Earth, but the the gravity is pulling it back. Additional perturbing forces like the sun and moon also act on geostationary satellite. So this is an absurd claim. I'm going to show you this here closely. So imagine this situation right here. You have Earth's gravity, Himawari standing at Himawari 8 and 9 standing at 35,000 kilometers away, 22 miles, and that's the centrifugal force. They are like it's a tug of war. So now pay attention to this, guys. This is incredible. Let's look at these absurd claims right here. What keeps the moon in orbit around the Earth? Gravity is what holds the planets in orbit around the sun and what keeps the moon in orbit around Earth. The gravitational pull of the moon pulls the seas towards it, causing the ocean tides. So you simple search here, I googled weight of the ocean. So Earth's ocean is made up of more than 20 seas and 4 oceans: Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and Pacific, the oldest and the largest. The ocean accounts for 0.022% of the total weight of Earth. Weight and estimated, all these numbers here, one followed by 18 digits, and short tons. One short ton equals 2,000 pounds, about 1,000 kilos. At the same time, the moon, which has the strength of pulling up the oceans, causing the tides, all the way from 238,000 miles, 300-something thousand kilometers. Same way, the moon is strong enough to pull up the oceans, but it's not strong enough to pull the satellites to its surface. Not even Himawari 8, weighing merely 1,300 kilograms. So this is for you to see how, not just how confusing gravity is, but how impossible this whole gravity mumbo jumbo is. So imagine the weight of the moon, and Earth can reach all the way the moon and keep it from being attracted to the sun. But at the same time, the gravity of Earth is not strong enough to pull back to Earth the International Space Station. Does not have the strength. At the same time, Earth's gravity does not have the strength to pull back Himawari 8, which weighs merely 1,300 kilograms, or about 2,000 pounds. So that's how confusing this thing is. Earth's gravity is strong enough to keep the moon from being taken away by the sun's much bigger size and much stronger gravity force. But at the same time, Earth's gravity is not strong enough to pull back to Earth the International Space Station, and much less Himawari. This is Earth's gravitational field, reaches the moon at 238,000 miles away. So Earth's gravity keeps moon in orbit, keeps the moon from being sucked onto the sun's surface. It's strong enough to reach 238,000 miles or 380,000 kilometers to keep the moon from falling into the sun's gravitational field. But at the same time, the moon cannot bring anything that's in between the moon and its own surface. No satellites are pulled towards Earth. So that says gravity is what holds the planets in orbit around the sun and what keeps the moon in orbit around Earth. The gravitational pull of the moon pulls the seas towards it, causing the ocean tides. We see here moon standing in between Earth and the Sun at a distance of 238,000 miles or 384,000 kilometers. Earth's gravity is strong enough to keep the moon from being taken by the Sun's gravity, being swallowed by Sun's gravity. So Earth's gravity is really strong to the point of reaching this amount of distance here. But it's not strong enough to get everything that's in between the moon and Earth, not even the satellites that are orbiting here, and satellites that weigh no more than 2,000 pounds, or the International Space Station that's standing just 200 miles up. So this is how confusing gravity is. Does it pull? Does it pull away? Does it suck? I mean, I'm talking here. Now, you don't need to be a flat earther to be questioning this thing. You should not be believing this whole gravity stuff because it makes no sense. Earth's gravity is strong enough to keep moon 238,000 away from being swallowed by the sun, but it's not strong enough to pull a simple satellite that weighs 2,000 pounds. You decide whether this stuff makes sense or not. So that's the real in scale, Earth and Moon to scale, speed of light in real time, surface to surface in 1,255 seconds. So that's the distance between the Moon and Earth, and it's the equivalent. You can fit 30 Earths between the Moon and us. To have it in a perspective, let's look at these two people. They are showing the distance of the Moon and Earth to Earth according in scale. So Earth is not strong to pull anything that's in between itself and the Moon, but it's strong enough to keep Moon from going towards the Sun. So things that only heliocentric Freemasons can explain. So one more thing, that's the solar system. And the Sun in the middle. The Sun is not strong enough to pull all this stuff to its surface. Nothing that's in between the Sun and the Earth gets pulled to the Sun. It's a tug of war, a constant, eternal tug of war. Things that only those mad scientists explain as being true. Inmarsat has also launched a series of geostationary satellites, and as you see here, the images are very similar to all the other rockets. Instead of going to space, they curve and falls back to Earth, and then immediately they switch to CGI images because they can't really film anything in the so-called space. Everything is done here on Earth. So whenever it goes out of sight here, it immediately becomes a CGI image. So Inmarsat, just like Himawari, doesn't really go to space. It's all a NASA production. Sending balloons to 1,000 miles in space? That is 760 miles higher above the International Holographic Station. What are they talking about? Balloons in space?
Inflatable plastic balloon satellite, 100 feet in diameter, tall as a 10-story building, will be sent aloft folded accordion fashion inside a 26.5-inch magnesium container. The latter is mounted in the nose of a 3-stage 92-foot Thor Delta rocket. Highlighting one of the nation's proudest days in space, the satellite, called Echo 1, will serve as a reflector for radio waves that bounce back to Earth, paving the way for a new kind of worldwide communications. The rocket at Cape Canaveral carries the balloon and 30 pounds of powder, which will turn to gas and inflate it at a height above 1,000 miles.
Sending balloons to 1,000 miles in space?
And as shown in this animated visualization, it is living up to the expectations of the space experts who say it functions almost perfectly. With extremely precise guidance, it is placing the balloon satellite almost exactly into the desired 1,000-mile-high circular orbit.
Sending balloons to 1,000 miles in space?
33 minutes after launching, the balloon is released and inflated by the powder inside, which turns from a solid into gas under the sun's temperature. The big balloon, visible like a bright star, quickly bounces a recorded message by President Eisenhower between stations in California and New Jersey. And here in Washington, the chief executive listens to his own voice as it sounded when bounced from the orbiting satellite.
So if NASA is able to have a balloon at 1,000 miles back in the 1950s, so they are able to have a satellite balloon at 1,500 miles up somehow inside the ether. I can't tell you exactly how it works because I'm not a NASA employee, high ranking, that know all the secrets. I'm just a regular guy. But there is a dome and nothing goes past that solid barrier. I want you guys to pay close attention to these two pictures, two images right here. Both women are using a device to see things that are really small, but the difference is that the first woman is using a telescope to see something that is small but distant. The second woman is using a microscope to see something that's really small but closer. If stars must be millions of miles away, germs must be millions of miles away as well. No, of course not. It's just because the stars are not as big as they told us. So you need a device similar to a microscope called telescope to see them. This is from George Orwell, 1984, Part 3, Chapter 2. But the world itself is only a speck of dust, and man is tiny, helpless. How long has he been in existence? For millions of years, the earth was uninhabited. Nonsense! The earth is as old as we are, no older. How could it be older? Nothing exists except through human consciousness. But the rocks are full of the bones of extinct animals, mammoths and mastodons and enormous reptiles, which lived here long before man was ever heard of. Have you ever seen those bones, Winston? Of course not. 19th century biologists invented them. Before man there was nothing. After man, if he could come to an end, there would be nothing. Outside man there is nothing. But the whole universe is outside us. Look at the stars. Some of them are 1,000,000 light years away. They are out of our reach forever. What are the stars? Said O'Brien indifferently. They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The Earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go round it. This is from 1984. Extremely important book for you must read. And the truth being transmitted right there. Stars are not millions of miles away. They are much closer and much smaller. So we need a device similar to a microscope to see them. Alright guys, I want to close this video just saying that we should never believe what they are telling us, seen on TV. It's all camera tricks or CGI. These images clearly tells us that this is a studio and everything there is CGI. These people are not in space. The space station is fake. It's all a swimming pool where they perform everything that they have to do off cameras, and then they film everything and then they show us images to make us believe they are really in space. You can see this footage right there. He's clearly under the water. He's not in space. That's supposed to be you are traveling in space outside, but this is all CGI, green screen, people hanging in cables, and clearly, and you see their secret signs there showing exactly what's going on. This is all trickery. This is all trickery. Devil's sign? No, that's But they do it today. They have done this since this whole space idea was conceived. It's nothing but deception, and it's been going on for many decades, and they are all deceivers. Space is fake. The earth is flat. You either open your eyes or you believe this fantasy, but they are all in the club where they play these tricks to deceive people. Look at all this devil sign. And they used to do different. Before it was only camera tricks. Today, as you see on the right side, you see all the green screen. But before, it used to be camera tricks. They filmed one side first and then the other side and stitched it together and made us believe that stuff. Look at this Charles Chaplin footage. This is all camera tricks. Very smart people doing this in the past. They're still doing this today. And this is how they fake space. This is how everything on TV is faked. Either green screen, blue screen. And I used to wonder myself when I was a kid watching those black and white movies, how did they do that? Well, that's how they did. And it's all camera tricks. And nowadays, CGI, computer generated images. Space is fake. Nothing can leave Earth, as Bill Nye said.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go. The Earth is a closed system.
The Earth is a closed system.
We cannot leave the Earth.
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 The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
Thank you for today. I'll see you next time. I got 2 more videos in the making, and God bless you. Bye-bye.